I kept getting texts from my landline. My name is Marcus Chen, and the events I'm about to describe took place only 3 months ago. I still hesitate whenever I replay them in my head, not because of anything supernatural, but because every detail fits together too neatly like a puzzle built by someone who already knew what picture would appear. After years of shared apartments, I finally landed a fully remote software engineering job and could afford my own place. The rental I chose sat on the edge of Portland's east side, a low-slung ranch built in 1974. The siding needed paint, the carpet smelled faintly of cigarettes, and the kitchen wall featured a rotary landline phone screwed in place as if the 70s had never ended. The realtor assured me the phone had been disconnected for ages, the wall jack had no wiring behind it. Cheap rent, a short commute to nowhere, and total silence, exactly what I wanted. For the first 2 weeks nothing happened except ordinary life. I woke at 7, brewed coffee, and coded until my wrists ached. One jogged in the evenings, streamed old sitcoms, and ate poorly. Silence was my favorite amenity. Then, on a Tuesday night around 9 p.m., a text lit up my cell. A known number, 503-555-8847. You should slide your coffee mug farther from the edge of the desk. I laughed, scooted the mug back, and figured it was a wrong number. The blinds were shut. No one could actually see me through the single small window of my office. 2 evenings later another text arrived. That bathroom lock sticks when you shower. Easy fix graphite powder. Cold pricked my neck. Only someone inside had any chance of noticing. That lock. Suspicion shoved me into a frantic room-by-room search. But every latch and window remained undisturbed. I reverse searched the number. It belonged to a landline disconnected in 2023, the very same model hanging on my kitchen wall. Maybe a prankster had spoofed caller ID, I reasoned. I'm a programmer, tech tricks exist. Sleep turned shallow. Messages multiplied, fell asleep on the couch again. Leftover low mean expired yesterday. Smoke detector 9 volts last about a year, you're overdue. Each was annoyingly accurate. Convinced I'd been hacked, I scanned my laptop, router, even the cheap smart TV I barely used. Nothing. Next I tore through cabinets hunting for hidden cameras. Still nothing. I phoned the carrier that once served this address. The rep confirmed the line had no current service, no record of outgoing calls or texts, and wished me luck. Great. My behavior changed. I worked from different rooms, kept lights off, and unplugged every device with a microphone. The texts continued, same number, same unemotional tone. Sitting in the dark won't help. The spare bedroom is 5 degrees colder, you'll move back to the office soon. Now, I was angry as much as scared. I installed new deadbolts, stuck a motion detector in the hallway, and kept a baseball bat beside the bed. I also set a script on my phone to log every incoming SMS with millisecond timestamps, hoping for a forensic clue. Nothing unusual showed up except the messages themselves. Early Thursday, 2:07 a.m., a floorboard creaked in the kitchen. My phone buzzed immediately. You should have replaced the backdoor strike plate. Bat in hand, I crept down the hall. The light above the stove glowed. The switch was on even though I'd turned it off hours earlier. A woman stood beneath it, facing the old phone. Mid-30s, jeans, gray hoodie, hair in a tight ponytail. She looked like someone who should have been filling her gas tank at a 7-Eleven, not inside my house. In her left hand she held a small black box tiled with unlabeled buttons. And a stubby antenna. Multicolored jumper wires snaked from the box to the exposed terminals where the phone's handset once connected. A faint green LED blinked with each buzz from my pocket. I must have whispered something, maybe just a startled breath, because she turned. Her eyes were rimmed with insomnia, not malice. You lasted longer than the others, she said, voice hoarse. I figured 3 weeks tops. Who are you? I managed. Maintenance. She allowed herself a tired half-smile. Not for the house, for the system. It needs someone on site to keep channel access open. She walked past me as if the bat were a prop. At the back door she paused. I told Brennan he ought to warn tenants, but vacant properties don't pay mortgages. Then she stepped into the yard and vanished into the dark. I stood there until the motion detector chimed its 30-second timeout. The black box still pulsed on the wall. I yanked the wires free, sealed it inside a cereal bag, and called 911. Police took statements, tested for prints, and carried the device away. One officer, an amateur radio enthusiast, thought it looked like a homemade GSM modem spliced into the house's dormant copper lines, basically a bridge that could grab electrical noise from inside wiring, convert it to data packets, and route texts through any prepaid SIM. Creepy, clever, and perfectly legal until someone trespasses to install it. They never located the woman. The lab report I requested a copy confirmed the modem's SIM card had last been topped up at a convenience store 2 miles away, paid in cash, case inactive. I broke my lease the next morning. Mr. Brennan merely sighed and said, "I understand. No penalty fee. My new apartment is downtown. Concrete and steel. No crawl space. No legacy wiring. I bought privacy screen curtains anyway. Sometimes, usually near 2 a.m. I wake and check my phone even though the number is blocked and my carrier filters spoofed SMS by default." A month after moving, curiosity overpowered caution. I drove past the ranch at dusk. Someone else lives there now. A kid's bike leaned against the porch. Through the window I saw a desk where mine once sat. The wall phone remained, silent and dignified, as though waiting for the next caretaker to forget to push their mug away from the edge. I thought about stopping, explaining everything, handing them a printout of the police report. But how do you warn a stranger without sounding unhinged? Your house might text you at night, "Just play along," until a sleepless woman appears with a soldered gadget. Yeah, no. The strangest part surfaced weeks later when I organized cloud backups and noticed the very last incoming message timestamped to 27 a.m., exactly 20 seconds after the woman slipped outside. Thank you. For what? For not swinging the bat. For reading every message. For moving out and making room for the next participant. I deleted the log, but not before counting the characters. That final text made an even 20,000, including timestamps. A data set, neat and tidy. I tell myself there's a rational explanation: an obsessive former tenant running a psych experiment, or a squatter exploiting unused copper wire to harvest data for some black market analytics firm. Both theories sound safer than believing a house can be lonely. One loose end, carrier logs showed every message routed through a microcell serving an industrial strip south of the airport, a dead zone for ordinary subscribers. The tower was decommissioned in 2021 but left energized because nobody filed shutdown paperwork. Whoever built that modem understood the network better than most engineers. Cherry-picking derelict infrastructure the way urban explorers pick forgotten tunnels. It proves. The story ends with a human, not a haunting, yet the chill in my spine hasn't gone anywhere. Either way, if you ever rent a place with a disconnected phone still bolted to the wall, do yourself a favor, ask what happened to the last person who lived there, and change the locks on day one. Someone was living above me. My name is Marcus Chen, and this happened last winter, a few months after I graduated college. I had just moved into my first apartment in downtown Portland, a small, slightly run-down one-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of an old brick building. The rent was cheaper than anything else I'd seen, which should have been a red flag. But at the time, I was just glad to find something I could afford. The place wasn't anything special. The hardwood floors creaked when you walked, the walls were yellowed from age, and the kitchen was so small I could stretch my arms and touch both sides. But what stood out the most was the ceiling. It was one of those old drop ceilings with removable panels, the kind usually found in offices. The landlord said it was put in back in the 80s to cover up cracked plaster. I didn't think much of it. The first few weeks went by without anything unusual. I worked long hours at my new job and usually just came home to eat, sleep, and maybe scroll through my phone before crashing. But after a while, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. Sometimes I'd come home and find my keys weren't where I left them, or I'd notice my laptop slightly off angle on the desk, like someone had nudged it. I kept telling myself I was probably just tired or forgetting things. Maybe the building shifted from time to time, or maybe the cleaning lady, though I never actually hired one. Then the noises started. It was always late at night, usually around 2 or 3 in the morning. Soft creaks, like something shifting overhead, not clear footsteps, but the kind of sound you hear when weight moves across an old wooden surface. I told myself it was probably just the building settling, or maybe rats in the attic. I went out and bought mouse traps, left them near the corners of the room and in the cabinet under the sink. But they stayed empty. After a few weeks of this, the lack of sleep started getting to me. I'd lie in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, straining to hear the faintest sound. My job performance started to slip. My boss even asked if everything was okay. I blamed it on stress. One night in early December, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know what was going on. I borrowed a small stepladder from the building's maintenance closet and set it up in my bedroom directly under one of the ceiling panels. When I pushed the tile up, a cloud of dust rained down. I shined my flashlight into the space above. At first, all I saw was wooden beams, old insulation, and wiring. But then something caught my eye: footprints. Clear, distinct shoe prints pressed into the dust, leading from above my bedroom toward the front of the apartment. My heart sank. I opened another panel near the living room and peeked inside. The attic space was low, maybe 3 feet high, and filled with old insulation and debris. I followed the footprints with my flashlight beam and spotted something in the far corner: blankets, a pile of them, and next to it, empty food wrappers, a few water bottles, a phone charger connected to a portable battery pack. Someone had been living up there, not just hiding, living. I backed away from the opening and stumbled off the ladder. My hands were shaking as I pushed the panels back into place. I grabbed some clothes, my phone, and my wallet, stuffed them in a backpack, and walked out without locking the door. I didn't even put on a coat. I spent that night in a cheap motel and called the police from there. They agreed to meet me at the apartment the next morning. I could tell the officer on the phone didn't fully believe me, but they showed up anyway. Back at the apartment, I led them to the ceiling panel. One officer climbed the ladder and looked inside. After a few seconds, he called his partner over. Then they called for backup. Within the hour, the entire unit was filled with officers. They found the makeshift bed, just like I had. But that wasn't the worst part. They found a notebook. In it were pages of handwritten notes, records of my daily schedule. What time I left for work. What time I got back. When I showered. When I ate. There were notes about my phone calls. Even what I was watching on TV some nights. Whoever had been living up there had been watching me closely. That's when they discovered something else. Several ceiling tiles throughout the apartment had been altered. Tiny holes drilled into them and covered with fine mesh, almost invisible from below unless you were looking for them. Peepholes. One was above my bed, another above the bathroom, another in the living room. They never found the person. The police guessed it was probably someone homeless who had figured out how to access the crawl space through a rarely locked maintenance hatch in the hallway. The building's security cameras didn't work. None of the wrappers or bottles had usable fingerprints, no trace. The landlord offered to seal the attic and replace the locks. But I was done. I paid the lease-breaking fee and moved back in with my parents for a while. Even now, in a new place with solid ceilings and working cameras, I still find myself waking up at 2 a.m. listening for soft creaks that aren't there. A few months later, the detective assigned to the case gave me a call. He said they'd found 2 other apartments nearby with similar setups, same kind of ceiling panels, same type of notes, same attention to detail. But there was something else. He said they found pages filled with handwriting that looked just like mine. My signature, grocery lists I'd thrown away, work notes. The person had been copying my handwriting. They'd probably gone through my trash to find samples. One of the other hideouts even had a spare key that could have been for my unit, though they couldn't confirm it. The scariest part isn't just that someone was living above me. It's that I have no idea how long they were there or what they were planning to do next. And I'll never rent another place with drop ceilings again. My door was locked, but someone came in anyway. It's been half a year since the worst night of my life, yet sleep still feels like a dare. I'm Alex Chen, 31. Inventory lead at a shipping depot in Portland, growing up in a duplex where a break-in was practically an annual tradition. I developed an obsession with barriers, solid doors, working locks, predictable routines. So when I rented my own place last winter, a fourth-floor studio in a 1970s brick building, I treated it like a personal fortress. I installed 3 commercial-grade deadbolts, swapped every window latch, and wedged a steel rod in the balcony slider track. My friends rolled their eyes. I called it peace of mind. The building was ordinary, 6 units per floor, dim hallways that smelled of dust and stale cooking oil, and a boiler that rattled whenever someone downstairs used hot water. Still, the rent was right, the commute 10 minutes, and elevation meant no one could simply step in through a window. My nightly drill never varied. I'd clock out around 7, grab a burrito, and be inside by 8. Door locked, deadbolts engaged, chain latched. Windows checked, rods in place. Thermostat set to 72. Then, I'd close the interior door that separated my sleeping nook from the rest of the studio, one last line of defense, and stream a show until lights out at 11. I'd followed that script for 2 quiet months when the rainstorm hit. It was a Tuesday in early March, rain hammering so hard against the glass the whole building seemed to pulse. I worked late for an inventory audit and walked into the lobby at 9:15, shoes soaked and shoulders aching. Routine or not, I performed every lock check, felt each bolt thud home, heard the chain settle. I microwaved ramen, half-watched a crime episode, and crashed. Normally the compressor in my mini fridge can yank me awake. That night nothing stirred me until dawn light leaked around the blackout curtains. The air felt wrong, sharp, almost icy, and my breath hung white. My stomach dropped when I saw the interior door standing fully open. I never leave that door ajar. Habit drilled into muscle memory. Door shut, handle turned, latch confirmed. I lay motionless, pulse thudding, forcing myself to catalog sounds. Nothing but wind against the glass. After maybe 10 seconds I swung my legs out. The laminate was freezing underfoot. In the main room everything appeared and touched: TV off, takeout container on the counter, shoes lined beside the mat. But tiny clues flickered. Both sneakers now faced the wall instead of the door. The couch throw, usually folded, was bunched in the middle cushion. A faint cigarette odor threaded the air. I've never smoked. Locks, I reminded myself. Every deadbolt was still engaged from the inside, security chain intact. Balcony rod where I'd wedged it. Windows latched. No broken glass, no pry marks. It made no physical sense. I dialed 911. 2 patrol officers arrived within 20 minutes. They combed the apartment, found no forced entry, no malfunctioning heater to explain the cold. One gently hinted I might have moved around half asleep. I didn't fight them, but something deeper than logic said the room had been occupied. After they left, I started my own sweep. Kitchen, living space, closet, nothing. Then the bathroom. Against the white hex tile, a single brown smear caught the light, a partial shoe tread, maybe size 11, angled toward the hall. The previous night's downpour explained fresh mud, but not inside my sealed apartment. I'd cleaned that floor 2 evenings earlier. I photographed the print with a tape measure for scale and called the station. Another officer logged the photo, but with no clear entry point. It stayed suspicious but inconclusive. I crammed clothes into an overnight bag and drove to my sister's place across town. She teased me for letting true crime podcasts dictate my anxiety, yet handed me a blanket and the Wi-Fi password. I didn't sleep so much as stare at the ceiling until sunrise. Next afternoon, my buddy Marcus, who once flipped houses with his uncle, met me outside. We walked every inch of the apartment. While checking the bathroom, he paused, stepped onto the toilet lid, and pressed a finger against the drop ceiling tile. "This is loose," he said, nudging it aside. Above was a crawl space 2 feet high running the corridor. Dusty but not dusty enough, a smooth trail traced from my uni toward the adjacent one, like knees had been sliding through. We borrowed a ladder and snapped photos. Two detectives followed the crawlspace path, finding identical access panels above 3 neighboring bathrooms. No fingerprints, just drag marks and a cigarette butt wedged behind a joist cheap and filtered. Everyone in my hall denied smoking. The detective laid it out in extent or current resident familiar with the blueprint used the shared ceiling void to roam. The studios mirrored one another, so he could memorize furniture placement, drop silently at night, and retreat if startled. Locks, alarms, cameras on the door, none mattered if the threat bypassed the doorway entirely. Management replaced every ceiling tile with screwed-in drywall, but I never spent another night there. I paid the lease break fee and moved into a mid-rise with coded elevators and 0 crawl spaces. I also mounted an interior camera facing my bed. Some friends call it overkill. They didn't wake to an open door that should have been shut. A month later, the detective rang 3 other downtown buildings, reported identical incidents, no theft, only small disturbances and cigarette odor. Same individual, refining his routine. No name, no visuals, just a methodical trespasser who enjoys being inches from sleeping strangers. Whoever slid through my ceiling didn't want valuables. He wanted presence, proof he could stand over me and vanish. Locks defeated, nerves shredded, mission accomplished. I tried therapy for a month, sitting in a softly lit office while a counselor asked me to rate my anxiety on color-coded charts. I told her I wasn't afraid of people so much as of gaps, the unseen seams in walls, and routines that let danger seep through. She called it hypervigilance and suggested breathing exercises. Nice idea in theory, but breath can't plug a crawl hole. I bought a stud finder instead and spent Saturdays mapping every cavity in my new apartment, assuring myself there were none big enough to hide a human body. The detective emails status updates now, and then, no suspect, no usable prints. The cigarette butt held degraded DNA, far beyond matching. Hallway footage shows nothing. He never uses the doors. They think he scouts vacancies, memorizes schedules, learns which tenants sleep deepest. A hobbyist predator, the detective said. Predators usually want money or violence. This one wants stage time and audience that doesn't even know the show is on. Rain returned last week. The hammering on the glass yanked me back to March. I lay still, counting the strikes, picturing crawl spaces in buildings all over town, arteries of dust connecting lives that never meet. Somewhere he's probably listening to the same storm. Sliding a panel aside. Savoring the chill he's about to leave behind, I hope he slips one night and crashes through. Ceiling, finally visible, finally explainable. Until then, I trust the camera's green light and the screws anchoring every inch of drywall overhead, and I remind myself that a locked door only protects the space it covers. Everything above and behind is opportunity for someone who knows where to look, and someone out there clearly does.